So once again, Grace Lore is not in her office, and they are supposed to be open now. So that's pretty pathetic, Grace. You're supposed to be the member of the Legislative Assembly for us. And that's 2 Thursdays in a row now. That's pretty bad. Hey folks, can you help us out? She's on Facebook. She's all over the place. Can you please send her some emails, phone calls, messages, and ask her why she's not meeting with us here? BCBC saved and is actually saving my life. And I guess Grace Lore doesn't care. Not in the office again.
And so I'm going to be writing something up, summarizing what I'm going to be saying here. But I won't be able to post that for about another week. Later today, I'll put up the email here and announce our plans to be back here again next week. But for the most part, we'll be here again next Thursday at 2 again, just to have a public presence and to get together and to keep people up to date. It is interesting how many people have last week drove down Ford Street or were on a bus that called us up later to ask what's going on and what's happening, why we're here. And so this is a good opportunity for us to, generate some activity, I guess, and let people know that we're still fighting until we get that court date. And so I talked to our lawyer again this morning, and they're filing something tomorrow, and hopefully, if not tomorrow, early next week, we'll have an actual court date. It should be within the next 2 weeks. Heads up, Carrie. I'm hoping it's not on the 17th of July, because 3 weeks from tomorrow, we're actually protesting a Health Canada meeting, because Health Canada is coming to town to talk to the legal cannabis industry about the regulations and how they can be improved. And this is all about making money in recreational cannabis and efficiencies in the industry. And so we're going to be there to remind them why cannabis was made legal in the first place, and why patients deserve better. And so after I read the letter, I'll get more into that one. But yeah, as far as I can tell, we're going to be here for the next couple weeks, again, unless we get a positive court injunction in the meantime.
So Ted's about to read out an email from Grace Lore for today. An email from Grace Lore.
Hello, Ted and the BCBC team. I have been following up with constituents who have reached out on your behalf and shared their support for the Victoria Cannabis Buyers Club. Well, for one, I actually don't know if she's followed up with any of our constituents. I've known many people to email her and call her, and to my knowledge, she hasn't got back to any of them. But obviously, she's heard from a few people and is reaching out. And in fact, the next sentence says, although my office and I have not heard from you directly, which is only because they shut their office down last week. They would have heard from me directly, because I made the point of coming here, but they seem to not want to hear me or meet me. And in fact, I haven't really made an extra effort recently, because in the past, when we were raided, in 2019 and 2020, when she was an MLA, we tried to talk to her. We tried to get through past her staff to have a discussion with her, and we couldn't. She would not meet with us face to face. Sir, we could tell her staff and email her what was wrong, but she wouldn't have an actual face to face discussion with us to find out what the problems were and what she might be able to do about it. And so she has, we have tried, but it hasn't worked. And so she goes, I did want to connect directly, so that's nice. And then she goes, I want yourselves and everyone who has reached out to me to know that I hear your concerns on the failure of the Federal Cannabis Act and cannabis regulations to support the work of the BCBC, the impact their services have had for many of you and your loved ones, and support for changes to existing laws to continue providing their products and services. And so I'm going to get to it a little bit later, but she speaks to the Federal Cannabis Act. Well, in fact, the province has their own little set of regulations here, and in fact, the province of BC is the only one that has made an organization like the CSU, the Community Safety Unit. In every other province, cannabis regulations and laws are enforced, by the police, like everything else.
Wow.
But here in British Columbia, we do have a task force specifically to target cannabis
Shame.
dealers. And so, yeah, sorry, sir, she won't be open Thursdays for the time being. Anyway, but yeah, at least she's heard our concerns. We'll see what will happen from that. So then the next sentence goes, as this is federal legislation, the exemption for medical use lies within Health Canada, and the province is unable to grant an exemption. Well, there's certainly a few things wrong with that. As I mentioned, the province certainly had a hand in the creation of the Cannabis Act and how it's been implemented here. Clearly the federal government and Health Canada are the ones that could have licensed compassion clubs and should have, really, for decades. From the very beginning of the program, they could have allowed for the storefront medical distribution of cannabis, but they resisted that tooth and nail. In the past, they would say that storefront medical distribution would lead to diversion to recreational users. Clearly that argument no longer stands, but that was their argument in the past for not having a medical storefront distribution. When it says the province is unable to grant an exemption, that is also not true. The province has within in its powers to grant exemptions and to work with and communicate with organizations such as ours before coming down with such a heavy hand. And while the province here would like to say, well, this is federal legislation, well, the fact is that the province has been the one to implement cannabis distribution here in the province. The province decided not to consult with our Compassion Club or any other Compassion Club or anyone in First Nations or anyone in the industry. They literally had zero consultation here in British Columbia and for the most part across Canada, which is why you see illegal Indigenous dispensaries proliferating across the country. You pretty much go to any reserve and you're one of the biggest industries now is actually illegal cannabis dispensaries selling high dose edibles. Because there's such a great demand for it that people will drive out there from the city just to be able to have access to products that they can't get from the legal system. And so, because of that lack of consultation, the Indigenous community has really stood up. But sadly, the medical marijuana community hasn't, and they've kind of folded under pressure, with the exception of us. But we should have been included in a conversation at least with the province before they started to implement and bring in these very heavy-handed draconian measures.
That's right.
But they didn't, and that was within the province's jurisdiction. The federal government didn't tell the province to legalize cannabis with no consultation. That's typically not the way laws are created, let alone something that has such a wide impact on our economy and health. And so, for her to just pawn this off as federal legislation, we have no control here. We're just the enforcement branch. When they do have control over that as well, like they have been very selective on their enforcement with us compared to other places, even like in cities in Vancouver, where there are other, illegal cannabis stores operating that aren't even medical, that haven't been raided as often or had their buildings seized and such. That's been happening to our medical club. And so, really the province does have a lot more control than they pretend to say they have. And then she goes on to say, I've been bringing these concerns to my colleague, Minister Krieger, and her team in the Ministry of Public Safety and Solicitor General, and will continue to do so that they can raise them with their federal counterparts. I will also share these concerns with our federal Member of Parliament, Will Greaves, and encourage you to share your thoughts with him as well. Well, I've tried to meet with Will Greaves too. Will Greaves' staff won't let me actually get a face-to-face or a phone call conversation with them. I've been able to meet with them and inform them on why we're not complying, and would hope that I could have or will get to meet with him to make him understand why that there is such a big problem here. But yeah, he's just done the old talk to the hand sort of thing through his staff as well, and it's been typically the way that the Liberals have dealt with this matter. But again, she's just trying to pawn it off to him. And it's interesting that she says she's bringing these concerns up to her colleague, when in fact later on she says that there's nothing that she can do at all. So either she can advocate within government for us, or she can't. And so I think that Minister Krieger also needs to meet with us and understand why we're not complying, and what the government might be able to do to work with us, especially after we get an injunction from the courts, to make it so that we can operate legally and openly and comply with the laws, because it's not impossible. It just needs to be done in the best interest of patients, or we're not going to budge. And so it's nice to hear that she's bringing these concerns up to Minister Krieger, but it really is too little too late, as is the next sentence. So she goes further and says, "I want to say that I hear how my video on civil forfeiture felt extremely hurtful to some people." And for those that don't know, we've been sharing on social media a little video that she made recently, really bragging about all the money that the province was taking from criminals through civil forfeiture, and then turning around and giving that money to nonprofit groups that were helping cancer patients and low-income patients and other people. And it was really insulting to a lot of us to hear her gloating about all the money that's being taken away from our landlord, for example, who's done nothing but help us out with giving us a space, knowing that there is some risk. But his property is going to be taken here. My girlfriend's house is going to be taken here under these measures. And it's something that is hurting our community, not helping our community at all. And she should know that. This has been front page news. This isn't something that's been happening, quietly in the background of Victoria. And so for her to just callously, ignore what is happening in her own community and make that video is honestly one of the reasons why we've chosen to be here every Thursday and get in her face, because she clearly doesn't understand the impact that her government's having on patients here in her own community, where she should be standing up for us, not turning her back to us. And so she goes to say, "And for that I apologize." And while I appreciate her apology, it's really too little too late.
Pretty empty.
This has gone too far, and she could have and should have done things far before now that would have been helpful in some way, or at least made us feel that we were being heard and not shut out, as we feel every time we come to a closed door. She goes, "It was not my intent, and I was not referring to the BCBC," which means she's just completely ignoring us. She does not care about us. We're nothing
Not
to
even
her.
thinking about
So she didn't even register at all with her when she was making that video that this may be affecting people in her backyard. And it was just something that she thought that this was just a great plugging point. But she goes, "I can recognize how that landed for those impacted. Please know my intent always is to share general information and make politics more accessible to folks." Well, on that note, I'm going to ask her, maybe she should then do little videos explaining about the buyout to all the billionaire condo owners, the developers that she's paying billions of dollars for, with her government, because they just simply tried to profit too much, including with the federal or provincial government, building a whole bunch of expensive condos for people that can't afford them, while completely ignoring low-income patients. Maybe she should make a video about how all the old growth trees are being logged still, because they're not doing anything to stop that. They're just giving it, to corporations and other groups, and allowing that. Or maybe they should do a video about how people like my partner Cleo can't get a doctor and can't barely even get the prescriptions that she needs to deal with the migraines that she has, and she can't even be here today because of our failing medical system. Just can't get her simple prescriptions. So maybe she could make a video about that, or how about Pandora, or so many other things that the government has failed with. For her to pick up, this civil forfeiture as somehow something for her to inform the public about, when there's so many other, really dire matters at hand, is really not only insulting to us, but insulting to the general public, because she's not making politics more accessible to folks in any way, shape, or form. And then, she goes, as a cancer survivor that has struggled with chronic fatigue, nausea, and pain, I am so sorry to those who feel disconnected from relief. Well, I'm certainly sorry that she has dealt with cancer. No one ever deserves that in any way. But it's really sad that she would say something like this, really, because so far our patients aren't disconnected from their relief. We've made sure that our patients, for the most part, have had access to their medicine, but they have been very stressed out because of what this government has been and plans upon doing to us. And so they could become, very disconnected from their medicine and from their relief, from their very lives. And so it's far more than just feeling a little disconnected from relief right now. But that will be certainly the case if her and her government are successful in their actions here. And so she needs to understand that this club has not been shut down yet, and if measures are taken properly, it will not be. And that she could be helping with that, not just wishing things were different. And then she goes in bold letters, I do need to note that as a locally elected representative, I am unable to get involved or comment on any matter that is before the courts due to conflict of interest rules. Therefore, I am not privy to or able to share any additional information related to enforcement action through the Community Safety Unit that occurred in April. Well, for one, we're not asking her to share any information related to the enforcement activity. We haven't been able to ask her anything. So she's just, saying that she can't help us out with something that we wouldn't have asked for in the first place. We know that she can't do anything to interfere with what's happening in the court. We would never ask her to do that. What we're asking for is some support. And what that would take would be for her to stand up to her party, for her party to stand up to the federal government. Exactly. Because I think I forgot to mention earlier when she was saying to bring it up, to our federal representatives. Well, in fact, when we were being raided back in 2019, 2020, we went really hard politically with every connection we had to fight to stay alive. One of the connections that we've had is the now retired Murray Rankin, who has represented this area in different federal and provincial cabinet minister seats. And I think at the time he was like the Minister for Aboriginal Affairs provincially, but he was a senior cabinet minister and had been a longtime supporter. I've got letters of support from him when he was a federal MP. Anyway, so I had Murray Rankin on the phone after the last round, and he told me that even though the NDP and the cabinet basically sympathized with what we were doing, that the NDP government simply would not take a stand against the federal government on this matter when they were trying to get cooperation from the Liberals on so many other portfolios. And this was when COVID was going on. So they're like, we're trying to get all this coordinating and money with COVID and everything. We're not going to make a stink over your medical marijuana club when all this other stuff is going on. We're trying to cooperate with the Liberals. So it's not that the NDP can't tell the Liberals what needs to be done here or won't tell the Liberals. In fact, on the point of the province being unable to grant an exemption, that is untrue on so many levels. Not only does the province have the power to grant exemption from the provincial legislation, But the province also has the opportunity to advocate for us to get that exemption. Instead of just telling us to go advocate, they could do it for us. In fact, they've done that in drug policies before. The provincial government has worked with the city of Vancouver to fight for the safe injection drug sites and Insight. And so they fought against Stephen Harper and the provincial Conservatives time and time again to get an exemption from drug laws for harm reduction. And so for her to say that, oh no, we can't help with an exemption, you go advocate for an exemption, we can't do anything about that, we can't get involved or comment even, is completely untrue. The NDP could be helping us, they could be working with us, they have chosen not to. And Grace Lohr has chosen not to fight her party, but to just keep going along with whatever it is that her party has been doing and plans on doing, because that is just far more easier for her than to stand up for what is right and for what is just in her own riding. And she goes, I know this doesn't provide a satisfactory resolution in the short term, but it is essential for courts and independent offices to do their jobs without political pressure. Well, again, we weren't asking her to put pressure on the courts. We've got that in hand. We're doing that. I don't see any way that she could pressure the courts anyway. That's made independent of her. But then she goes, and independent offices. And so again, the CSU was created by the province as an enforcement branch, but for her to claim that it's somehow an independent office that they have no jurisdiction over, I think is completely untrue. That's like claiming that city bylaws is independent of city council, right? That somehow, that the government can direct people to do things in a positive way. If they see a problem, they can tell their staff, oh, you go deal with that. But if there's something that is happening that their staff is doing that they shouldn't, somehow they have no control over that. That's just the staff, they're beyond their control, which is just simply not true. The Solicitor General's office and the Premier could very easily tell the CSU to back off, to work with us to actually get a court date rather than trying to shut us down before we have an opportunity to argue the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And so, it's clearly not a satisfactory resolution. And then she ends with, again, you have my commitment to continuing to bring concerns raised forward on behalf of our community. I encourage you to reach out to our MP, the Federal Minister for Public Safety, and the Federal Minister for Justice. So I will be including these other federal ministers in my correspondence here with Grace Lohr in the future, probably tag a couple other people along the way. Because in a way, what Grace has done here is really provide me a nice little framework to respond to her questions and concerns and statements in a way that will really help people understand what the situation is here and why we are so frustrated with the way that the NDP has behaved on this portfolio long before the day cannabis even became legal. Because as I'll remind people, this NDP government just saw cannabis legalization as a cash cow. Exactly. The first legal store in this province was owned by the province. They weren't doing anything to support local retailers, let alone compassion clubs. And so the province here just simply sees us as competition. They just don't want patients getting a discount. They want everyone paying top dollar so they get as much tax money as they can from what they consider to be a harmful, dangerous drug. They do not consider this to be medicine. They don't want it to be thought of as a medicine. The medical community is absolutely disgusted with the idea, and certainly the province is helping to, in every way they can to see that through. And so, so I guess on with as far as the rest of the political fight goes, I still don't have a letter from the mayor and council. I thought when I talked to the mayor now almost 2 weeks ago that the letter was coming that day. It's really curious as to why that hasn't come through. I did send another email, I think yesterday, asking what the holdup was, but still no answer. So there may be some tinkering with the language. There may still be some negotiations happening with Nina Krieger somehow, because we're trying to meet with her and see if that can happen. So, you know, I really don't know what the holdup is. I've also, the mayor's been trying to get me together with the chief of police. Unfortunately, the chief didn't feel well last week, and this week had the week booked off. So we've had to schedule, I think the 13th of July is when I'll be meeting with the chief of police, the day after Pride. And so, yeah, that's going to be a busy week because we have Pride on the Sunday. I'm chief on Monday. Thursday, there's going to be an all-day conference in James Bay that I'm going to, that's of the legal industry. And then on the Friday is the day that Health Canada is going to be here. So that's Friday, the 17th of July. It is in an odd location. I thought at first it might have been beside the Parliaments, but it's actually way out by the cruise ships at Ogden Point. There's some hall there that they've rented. And so we're going to be, you know, kind of at the driveway there, setting up for the entire day. It starts at 9, so 9 to 4. I'm going to get Candy to use my car to shuttle people back and forth from the club if they need some help with that. Yeah, it's going to be hopefully a beautiful day out at Ogden Point, meeting a whole bunch of tourists coming off the cruise ships, explaining why our government sucks.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, so that's, again, the 17th of July. We'll be getting, I'm actually going to start putting the word out tomorrow. I just kind of held back for a few reasons. And then, oh yeah, I also have a meeting coming up, I think it's the 9th of July, with Elizabeth May, the leader of the federal Green Party. And so Elizabeth's been very supportive of us in the past, and I would expect nothing less now. Who knows, maybe I'll even talk her into throwing the gauntlet down in Ottawa, although I think the summer session's probably over at this point. Yeah, we'll see. Certainly we've got strong support. Oh, hey there again, thank you. Woo-woo. You know, we've got great support from the local Green Party and the leader, Emily Lowen. And so, yeah, hopefully she'll be coming out to our court dates when that happens too. So I think that's most of the updates and things like that.